Tony, how are you? Tony,
How are you?
President.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir, here.
Hi, Peter. Fred here. Hi, Cesar.
Yeah. Hi.
We cannot see you, Cesar.
Fred. You can't see me, huh?
No,
Sorry.
you're hiding
Yan.
yourself.
Yan. Wala pa?
Wala pa rin.
Wala.
Ron, wala pa?
There you go.
Wala? Start video ko ako eh. Wala eh. Naka-block yata ako.
Pag gwapo ka masyado eh, ma-overshadow mo kami eh. So,
Nakita mo na? Kikita mo ba ako?
hindi.
Hindi pa rin, ha?
Wala pa. Nantay ka.
Ayan. Start video. Wala pa? Ron. Pass.
Hindi na ba? Baka naman nandito ka na sa gallery. Wala pa rin eh. O yun, nakita na kita.
Yan na.
Sir, I can see you. Yeah.
Share dito eh. Hindi lang ako nakakita.
Although, 1/4 lang ng Facebook, hindi naka-focus yung camera sa iyo eh.
Ito, pipindutin kita.
So, nawala ka, sir.
Nawala.
Ito.
Hindi ka naka-focus.
Anong time ang meeting natin?
2 minutes. We're starting in 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yep.
Okay.
Nando si Kila.
Nandito siya sa ano.
Kanina nakita
He's
na.
here in the club.
Okay. Walang sound.
Ron, kikita mo na ako? Tony, kikita mo ako?
Yes, sir.
Can you see me now?
Right, 1 minute.
Yes, sir, you're very visible.
Yeah.
Ayan, anak.
Hi, ito kayo.
Hi.
Fred here.
Yeah. Fred Parungaw yun. Si
Fred,
Tony.
ito kayo.
Ay.
Pero nakita na niya kayo. Kasi
Hindi ba ako lumalabas dito?
Ay, boss ng kamo, Jerry Santos, ano?
pasensya niya yun.
Hindi pa.
Mamaya po, mag-aano na siya. Pa-share ko kasi itong meeting.
Pero tayo biscuit ng ganyan, di ba? Crackers.
Kasi naka-exit natin.
Connected.
Lagi na ba si ano? Chairman Emil? Chairman Emil, hi, good afternoon. This is Fred Pascual.
Hi, Fred.
Hi.
I'm here. I'm just waiting for 26
Fred.
seconds.
Hi. Thank you for gracing our Rotary Club.
Hi, yes. My pleasure.
Okay, let's start.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Brian Liu, and it is a great privilege to be your moderator for today. And we thank you all for taking the time this busy afternoon of yours to come and join us. And first up, we'd like to start by listing the House rules. So before we start, we'd just like to go through some of the House rules. First, please be advised that microphones of non-program participants will be muted to help keep the background noise to a minimum. And may we request the visiting Rotarians and guests to please type in the comment box your name, your club or affiliation, or the RC Makati Rotarians who invited you to participate in this meeting, so we can properly acknowledge you later in the program. Third, for our open forum, after the talk of the speaker, in case you want to ask a question, please use the raise hand button or simply notify us by typing in the comment box. Alternatively, you may want to type in your question and we will try to accommodate it during the Q&A. Lastly, please don't leave yet after the response of our president, as we will have our group photo op with our speaker. And next up, we move forward to call to order Mr. President Peter Manzano.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, lovely hands, and guests. I now call this 14th regular meeting of the Rotary Club of Makati to order.
And moving forward, we would like to welcome in our invocator, Mr. P.P. Fred Arumao.
Epson nga, refillable. Ignan.
Fellow Rotarians and guests, let us place ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Dear Lord, we give thanks and praise to you once again for allowing us to gather in our weekly Rotary meeting. We pray that you spare our families from the scourge of the COVID pandemic that has been plaguing the world for 8 months now. We pray that you grant healing to those who have been infected and to grant eternal rest to our brothers and sisters who have succumbed to this terrible disease. We pray that you continue to guide our Rotary Club in doing its part in rendering service to the community. May we be given the fortitude and resources to extend maximum assistance to those who are in need. We pray that you grant our guest speaker today, Chairman Emilio Aquino of the Securities and Exchange Commission, the grace to enable him to impart to us his very important message on the salient features of the revised Corporation Code, and for our members to fully absorb his message. Lastly, Lord, please bless all the members of our Rotary Club and guests present today. May we continue to glorify you in everything that we do. All this we ask in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Past President Fred, for the lovely prayer. And we would like to move on to our Philippine National Anthem.
are leaders with integrity, always ready to serve humanity, always living by the four-way test, building goodwill and peace on the way, giving hope to the world with a Rotary Club of Makati, with our fellow men, as true Rotarians we live to be. We believe in service of ourselves, and this is why we succeed. We're the Rotary Club of Makati, and together we stand proud. We are leaders with integrity, always ready to serve humanity, always living by the four-way test, building goodwill and peace along the way, giving hope to the world. We're the Rotary Club of Makati, giving hope to the world. The Rotary Club of Makati.
And now we go to the four-way test. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And now we move forward to the recognition of Paul Harris Fellows.
We'll give recognition and pin the Paul Harris pin on Director Chris Cadareta. His fourth Paul Harris is getting a pin with 3 sapphire stones. His Paul Harris pin and his certificate. One, two, three. Then we'll give the Paul Harris pin to our moderator, Rory and Leo. The second Paul Harris. And then has pin with one sapphire. One more. No, more. Right? Hi, sir. 1, 2, 3. Another one. Oh, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
And now we wish to recognize some of the birthdays of our fellow Rotarians and aunts. We wish to give our greetings for the following birthdays and wedding anniversaries to our celebrators.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
happy birthday to Rotarian Roger Sarmiento, who celebrated on October 21. Tony Tan, happy birthday, who celebrated at October 26th. And for our Rotary aunts, Miss Theodi Buenaflor, happy birthday on October 23, and Miss Rina Colliantes, who celebrated on October 25. Plus, a happy wedding anniversary to past President Joe and Mary Lou Alejandro on October 20. Tetu and Risa Garcia, October 20 as well. And Fred and baby Frick on October 20 anniversary as well. So congrats to everybody. And we'd also like to recognize and introduce some of our visiting Rotarians and guests. Past District Governor Digna Ragasa, and Perfect Vision President Cynthia Chasantos from RC Makati, Cristo Rey, and PVP Kath Ronquillo from RC Makati Olympia, PVP Danny Delphin from RC Parañaque St. Andrew, PVP Katie Lopez from Muntinlupa North, and PVP Ricky Trinidad from RC Makati Premier District, PVP Angeli Gurnamal from Makati Ayala Triangle. And to our visiting Rotary aunts, first Ann Pam Manzano, thank you for being here, and CP Mache Ackerman, and Yvonne Kwan. Other club members who we wish to welcome as well is PP Carol from RC Bigan, and guests Feli and Antonia. Thank you. We'd like to proceed to the President's Time with our President, Mr. Peter Manzano.
Good afternoon once again, fellow Rotarians, our lovely aunts and guests. Here's the pricey of the goings-on in our club. First, last Thursday, the board all right. Once again, good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, our lovely aunts and guests. Here's to apprise you of the goings-on in our club. First, last Thursday, the board held its regular meeting and approved, among others, the following. Number one, the funding for the once-a-week, 6 months feeding project with St. Peter and Paul Parish, as requested by their parish priest, Monsignor Jerry Santos, through our daughter club, RC Makati Poblacion. The second is the funding of the requested solar-powered charging set from the Dumagat community of Puray, Rodriguez, Rizal, for the use of the high school students in Puray High School. Incidentally, we shall be going back to Rodriguez, Rizal on Saturday morning with Perfect Vision President Sherwin Torres of the RC Makati Southwest to deliver the second batch of printed distance learning materials, as well as their requested solar-powered charging set. We also approved the realignment of the 1.3 million dorm budget to address the distance learning requests of different schools and communities. Fourth, we approved also the $5,000 contribution to the joint mental health project with our sister club, RC Karachi. Also, the $5,000 contribution to the Gift of Life project of our sister club, RC Shanghai, and the funding of our voters registration project. Second, Last Saturday was a very productive webinar at the town hall conducted by the district on public image. We shall have the second part of said seminar again tonight at 7:30. Third, we shall be conducting a training seminar for our Rotaractors on voters assistance this coming Friday at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom. The aim of which is to equip them with the proper know-how in assisting our registrants in our parish-based voters assistance program with PPCRV. And finally, on Saturday at 3:30 in the afternoon, the district will be commemorating the World Polio Day through a virtual meeting at the town hall of all the clubs in the district. So far, we already have 22 from our members who have signified their joining. And I would like to encourage everyone in our club, including our lovely aunts, to please join us on Saturday for the End Polio Now campaign. We will be providing you the t-shirts you will be wearing online. So please let us know in advance so we can order your shirt sizes early. See you all on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, President Peter, for the wonderful words. And we would like to welcome in PP Eddie Yap as our introducer for today's guest.
Okay. Hola. Buenas tardes, amigos y amigas. Caballeros y caballeras, pero sin caballo.
JP, you're the one in Group B.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, PPIT.
Can you hear me?
Yes, PPIT. You're loud and clear.
Okay, good. That is a Chabacano joke. I think I can hear Spanish-speaking member Rodrigo Segura laughing at the background. Now, why Chabacano? Because our speaker today is a Sambuangueño and my cat Chabacano. Pero acabo ya mi Chabacano, por eso I will continue in English.
You're doing very well there, Eddie.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad, Rodrigo, you're there. Thank you.
Sure.
One thing I would like to highlight about our guest speaker is that he is one of our own. A true blue Rotarian. He was president of the Rotary Club of Zamboanga in Rotary year 2009, 2010, a major donor of Rotary Foundation, most outstanding club president, and most outstanding club in the district, 3850. He has a very impressive scholastic credentials, consistent top-notch student since elementary, valedictorian, magna cum laude in accountancy from the Universidad de Zamboanga. Development Academy of the Philippines master's degree in public management, Dean's Lister, and silver medalist at San Beda College of Law. 16th placer in the bar examination. Wow. Now, his career in the Securities and Exchange Commission, he rose through the ranks. He was SEC Director of 2 extension offices, Director for Enforcement and for Non-Traditional Securities Chairman. While Commissioner, he shepherded the passage of the revised corporation code. Now, in between his service, he was in private practice. He was appointed chairman on June 6, 2018, with a term of 7 years, the first CPA lawyer of the chairman of the SEC. So he's concurrently the chairperson of the Credit Information Corporation and Micro NGO Regulatory Council, member of the Anti-Money Laundering Council, ASEAN Capital Market Forum, Corporate Governance Working Group, and the top recipient of the UNCTAD ISAR honors in Geneva. Now, we Zamboangueños cheered his appointment. He adds to the roster of Zamboangueños in the Duterte administration, including the Department of Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez, who was honored by the city of his birth with the largest civic military parade that I and our guest speaker had seen. COVID frontliners in Zamboanga were spared from infection by the efforts of our speaker with donations of PPEs at the time when it was very scarce, through his brother-in-law, Dr. Anakan, who is president of a medical group there. He is married to Brendalyn de los Santos, muy hermosa, I assure you. She was Rotary Spouse Club president. Our speaker has 4 children. 3 went to France for Rotary Youth Exchange Program. So because of this, don't be surprised if our guest speaker expects, you can expect him to speak some French, like oui, Chevrolet. I want to wake you up. So I add a few jokes. So now, fellow Rotarians, I am happy and delighted, privileged, in fact, to welcome and present our speaker of the day, Securities and Exchange Commission Chairman, Emilio Aquino. Let's welcome him.
Thank you very much, my friend, amigo. Bonjour, Ediap, mon ami. I'll go through the usual introduction and protocol in Rotary. Since I am one of you, okay, let me just share my screen and the title presentation. President Peter Manzano, fellow Rotarians, lovely aunts, Rotaractors, friends of Rotary, buenas tardes, good afternoon. I have to say that I miss attending Rotary activities because of this pandemic, although we tried to help in the distribution of PPEs before. In fact, he mentioned Dr. Anakan, my favorite brother-in-law because he's married to my only sister, was recognized as a Service Above Self awardee by Rotary International because of his, he had been doing his medical missions outside of Zamboanga in the islands of Sulu and in Basilan. Okay, so but anyway, when I was invited to be the guest speaker this afternoon, of course, I did not want to pass this opportunity to be with you, my fellow Rotarians. For one, I saw some familiar names in your roster, especially, of course, my idol kababayan, past President Eddie Yap, your golden anniversary president, and of course also your immediate past president, Alfred Pascual. And I also remember that this is the home club of PDG Paeng Chanova, who assisted us actually in getting more than $400,000 in matching grants for our water project. This was during my time back in 2010. And you know, that project has served the Zamboangueños, thousands of Zamboangueños. So big thanks to Go Paeng. So when I was asked on what topic I'd like to share with you this afternoon, I immediately thought of the revised corporation code and considering its relevance. In fact, I changed the title a bit just to edit, purposely I edited it for Rotary Club of Makati. A lot of the members here anyway are prominent businessmen. And I know that the subject matter is close to the heart of IPP, immediate past President Alfred Pascual. Since ICD, where he was president then, in last year, was a hands-on partner in pushing the corporate governance amendments. You see, I've been giving talks to other Rotary clubs, especially in Mindanao, through Zoom, and my topic was consistently about incorporating a Rotary club. Now, it's quite different for RC Makati, as you are already incorporated, and because of that, I did some checking in our database of your reportorial requirements, and I'm happy to say that your general information sheet are updated for 2020. Same for your Makati Rotary Club Foundation. Now, I still didn't get to hold on your latest financial statements for 2019 because apparently we have to retrieve them from our warehouse. You see, this pandemic has caused us, so much disruptions in our work, and we have been giving constantly regulatory leeways to our clients by extending deadlines and all. Now, it did not help that even 20 of our staff contracted COVID, although most of them are community transmissions. None of them were transmitted within our workplaces in PICC or in any of our regional offices. So, but it did cause a loss of people momentarily, including one of our frontline directors. So let me now proceed with my presentation, which I entitled, I edited a bit, Timely Changes in the Corporate Law Landscape, the Passage of the Revised Corporation Code, or the RCC. So it's not the Rotary Community Core that we know in Rotary. It's the Revised Corporation Code. Okay, I dissected the old corporation code so you will be able to know which provisions were revised or deleted, or which are the new ones. Okay. Likewise, I will share to you some of the reasons for such amendments, which I personally witnessed when it was deliberated in Congress. So you get first-hand information. Now, the principal author is Senator Franklin Drilon, and this was passed unanimously by both houses of Congress. Okay, let's go to slide. The rationale of the law. The RCC, we just call it RCC, introduces new and developing concepts seeking to first improve the ease of doing business. So examples would be the removal of the minimum paid up capital. Wala na pong minimum. Then the introduction of the one-person corporation or OPC. And then we also took out the minimum number of incorporators as well as the minimum number of directors and trustees. Then we also introduced perpetual existence for all our corporations, okay, both stock, non-stock. And there's now a mandatory requirement to come up with an online system. And by the way, the passage of this law brought about a significant improvement in our the World Bank doing business report for 2020. So the country improved by 29 notches, no? From its 124th place to 95. Okay, so half of that score, the 29, is over half, was attributable to the amendments that which we were able to introduce in with the RCC. So it's really timely. Now, second, it institutes corporate governance standards, including the protection of minority interests, consistent to international best practices. So again, thanks to IPP Alfred is going to answer the questions during the Q&A, because you know, the provisions there contains a lot of corporate governance practices, including the increase in the power and authority of the SEC, the promotion, first time promotion of corporate governance, and the promotion of minority interest. There's the independent directors too for companies vested with public interest. There's so many of these provisions which we will discuss later, but a lot of them centers on corporate governance, to the point that even Attorney Francis Lim did say that this should be the code of corporate governance instead of RCC. Now, just to share with you that the SEC has even no express legal authority when we passed that requirement for corporate, the code of corporate governance back in 2002. But with the RCC now, we have that express authority in the law. And in fact, we're happy that we were able to also pass the sustainability reporting guidelines, which merited global recognition. You know, the award which we got the UN Palace of Nations in Geneva last year. Now, thirdly, the RCC makes use of new and emerging technologies. Imagine if we still require a physical presence in board meetings, okay? Or even in the ASM, annual stockholders meetings. But in the RCC, it provides for remote communications. Okay, so pinayagan na. As well as electronic filing and monitoring systems. You could do the submissions online. Although we're not there yet, but we're starting to work on our systems on that. And fourthly, it strengthens the regulatory and enforcement powers of the SEC. So in fact, in this new law, there's one separate title of 19 provisions on investigations, offenses, and penalties. And also expanded the powers and authority of the SEC. Just to share with you, there were big scams that hit Mindanao mid last year. You know, we issued cease and desist orders against these companies. And yet, you know what happened? They went to the courts, and 2 RTCs issued injunctive reliefs, or TRO, against the SEC. But thanks to the RCC now, you can only secure a TRO or an injunctive relief from the level of the Court of Appeals. So no courts below the Court of Appeals can now issue TROs or injunctive relief against the SEC. It also added the visitorial powers of the SEC. We can knock on the door of errant firms, and if they refuse or obstruct us, then we could revoke and consider other administrative liabilities against of these firms. And of course, it also provided us fiscal autonomy, allowing us to retain our collections. Now, on the repealing clause, this particular law repealed the entire BP 68, otherwise known as the Corporation Code of the Philippines. Please note that the Corporation Code has never undergone, not that I know of, for the last 40 years, no amendments whatsoever since its enactment in 1980. Unlike its predecessor law, which is the Corporation Law, passed in the early 1900s, 1906 to be specific. It was amended for 33 times. Okay, so hence we can safely say that the enactment of the RCC is indeed a landmark legislation which has been long forthcoming. By the way, the original bill was filed in the 16th Congress by Senator Chis Escudero. This was in February of 2014, or it took 5 years before it saw the light of the day. Okay, the law was signed by our president on the February 20 and published in the Manila Bulletin and Business Mirror on the 23rd of that month. So it took effect that day, February 23, 2019, which is the date of its publication. Now, Section 185 provides for a transition period. This is very important because this would already be on February 23, 2021. So within that 2-year period from its the effectivity, there are certain things that stockholders of directors and officers may have to do within that 2-year transition period. And for example, just to cite an example, since we already introduced the perpetual term of existence, it's now for all companies, it's all perpetual unless they have 2 years within which to notify the SEC that they would like to stick to the original term, okay, in their articles of incorporation. Otherwise, it's perpetual. Now, another instance would be in the case of trustees, because before we would allow trustees to have a term of at least 5 years. Now we have to bring it down to just 3 years because that's the ceiling provided in the law. Okay. Now let's have an overview of the changes made to the corporation code. Okay. Okay. This just to give you an idea of which sections of the old corporation code were amended, informed, have undergone minor revisions, or no change at all. Now, I just lumped them together, all 94 of these provisions, which are had undergone minor revisions. In the ICD primer, where I got the summary, sina IPP immediate past President Alfred went into the trouble of identifying which provisions were not changed, those amended in form, and those which had minor revisions. For our purpose, I just lumped them together. There were 3 provisions which were deleted, okay, on capital stock subscription and paid up capital, that was taken out. The requirement of prior endorsement to DepEd, CHED, and TESDA, that was likewise taken out. And Section 144, which provided like the entire, that's the only section providing for penalties, okay? Then we have the, now you see which provisions were substantially amended. Okay, from those deleted, now we have those which are substantially amended. Total 52 provisions. Okay, we'll tackle some of them. And then, okay, we have these new provisions. These are entirely new provisions. And I think the word emphasizing would be the one-person corporation, which is an easy favorite. Okay, there are 42 new and fresh provisions, no? And plus a lot more. There are, in fact, additional provisions in the form of amendments to previous sections, like the independent director provision, those allowing the issuance of summary orders to require the holding of stockholders meeting, the concept of which is new, emergency board. And by the way, now corporations can enter into partnerships. That can't be done before, but now it can happen. Last, the visitorial powers and the expanded power and authority of the commission. Okay, now let's have the summary of the changes. Okay, so total provisions of the RCC is 188 versus 149 of the corporation code. Okay, now half of the 188 had minor revisions or no change at all. 3 were taken out, deleted, and 52 were which were substantially amended, and 42 new provisions, which is also a total of 94, or a perfect half enough, no? So we don't have to study all of them. We simply have to learn the other half, no? And given our time constraint, we'll just have to tackle some of the more important ones this afternoon. Okay. The next slide, well, this is just a transition. Okay, we'll tackle those which were deleted. And then this particular slide anyway just shows a comparison. Don't worry, the font is a bit small. I'd just like to stress here that we have the 25% rule. Dati, 25% of subscription must be subscribed. I should say, the authorized 25% must be subscribed, and 25 of those subscribed must be paid. Okay, that's what we know. But that has already been obliterated, but not completely. Obliterated, but not completely. Because as you will learn later, if you do an increase in capital stock, you still have to comply with the 25% rule. Okay. Next slide would show the summary. So I have to confess, this is one thing I had my doubts about the removal of the 25% rule. As a CPA, I said, no, you have to bring in some form of money, for operational capital of the corporation. But let's say you have an authorized capital stock of 10 million, and then the applicant would say, no, I only have a paid up capital of 1 peso. Is that possible? Well, is that legally feasible? The answer is yes. But the question is, will you do it? Okay. I remember, in convincing me that this is feasible, and practicable. The corporation code used to prescribe a minimum paid up capital of just 5,000 pesos. So when I was still a young lawyer in SEC, I haven't experienced a company just having a paid up capital of as low as 5,000 pesos. So I said, you spend more than 5,000 in the first place just to have your company registered. So while it may be legally feasible, but not practical at all. But here's a tip. I suggest that you already maximize your authorized capital stock. You know why? Because the first time when you incorporate, wala pang minimum. But once you increase, you're bound to follow the 25% rule. Okay? And the reason for this is that hindi na po siyang ease of doing business concern, as it addresses only, EODB only addresses barrier to entry issues. So we had that 25% ruling prescribed during your increase in capital stock. Okay, now section 107 of the corporation code actually provides for prior endorsements. Ito for schools, you have to go to DepEd, to CHED, or TESDA. That has been removed. And so are requirements for prior endorsements, okay, to other regulatory agencies except for financial intermediaries and insurance companies. So those which are regulated primarily by the BSP and the IC, the Insurance Commission, yun, kailangan po ng endorsement. Because our experience here is this. It has always been like a football match. TESDA would not give their endorsement unless SEC will approve it. On the other hand, SEC would say, no, you have to give us the endorsement so we can approve it. But now, wala na pong prior endorsements because they only cause delays. Okay? This particular section, I already mentioned, just one section providing for, penalties for violations of all provisions of the corporation code. This was taken out, and then now we have like a title of consisting of 19 provisions embodying specific offenses. Naka-specify talaga. But this is also important. The penalty of imprisonment was removed. Okay, but it's replaced by monetary fines in big amounts, in the millions, to serve as deterrent. Now, the SEC was also given the power to issue cease and desist orders and to hold persons in contempt. Okay. These are just transition slides. Okay, these are provisions which were substantially amended. Okay, now, in the case of incorporators, this is a comparison of Section 10 and of the Corpo Code and the RCC, there is a removal of the minimum number of incorporators. Before you can start, you'll probably include your driver, your helper, just so you will be able to complete the minimum requirement of 5 incorporators. That is no longer a requirement. And further, majority of the incorporators must be residents. We took that out as well. Okay? On slide 20. Okay. Ito ang summary. Just the summary. Okay. As I said, no more minimum, but there's a maximum of 15. The majority must be residents, but that has already been taken out. And by the way, nakalagay din po, dati natural persons lang can be incorporators. Under the RCC, to your right, you'll see that it will be any person. So not just natural persons. Pwede na rin partnerships, associations, and corporations as incorporators, but not to exceed 15. And for the natural persons who are incorporators, of course, must be of legal age and still own at least a share of stock. Now, these natural persons, partnerships, associations are not allowed to organize as a corporation if it is for the purpose of practicing a profession, unless provided by special laws, like in the case of, I think, architecture and chemistry and aeronautics. They don't require corporate setup. Pwede i-organize. Okay, next slide. Now, Section 11 provides for the corporate term. This is under the Corporation Code, which says not exceeding 50 years, renewable for another 50 years, but the extension can be made earlier than 5 years. This has already been changed, no, in the RCC. So if you will note, the RCC provides for perpetual term unless the Articles of Incorporation provides otherwise. Let's go to the next slide where I summarized it. Ito. I think this is very important. All new corporations automatically have perpetual term unless you state there, this is only good for 30 years. This is only good for 20 years. Now, second, existing corporations, those which are already there, automatically have perpetual term. Unless, again, unless within 2 years from February 23, 2019, you have that chance to say, no, I'd rather stick to the term indicated in my Articles of Incorporation by majority of the outstanding capital stock voting for it. Okay? So you can stick to your original term. Now, for those which were considered as perpetual and there are dissenting on stockholders, they may exercise their appraisal right because they don't want to continue anymore. So that's a right given to them. And then on corporations with expired terms, okay, they may apply for revival. Normally, these are companies with substantial investment in real estate. Just this morning, we approved one company which revived which expired back in 2009. Okay, they wanted to continue on because it's so difficult when your term has expired, especially if you overlooked it, because you'll have to pay these taxes. You have to secure your tax clearance, and then probably have to reincorporate. So, but under the RCC now, you can just go to the SEC, file your petition for revival, and then you may continue. Okay. So, yun. Next, please. Okay. On corporate name. Now, we're just comparing the Corporation Code and the RCC. Now, the standout standards would be for the Corp Code, the identical or deceptively or confusingly similar names. On the other hand, now under the RCC, those it should be distinguishable. Yun lang po. Yun lang ang difference. And plus, there's a list of provisions there which were dati na po SEC were issuing guidelines na institutionalize na lang din ito, no? So you will notice it. Na institutionalize lang ito in the RCC. So this is just a summary, not distinguishable, already protected by law. So if you are an insurance, if you use the word insurance and you are not an insurance company, you're not allowed to use that, okay? Or it's contrary to law, rules, and regulations. You put there, let's say, you want a Abu Sayyaf Incorporated. So we're not going to allow that. And the SEC may summarily order the company to cease and desist using that name, okay? And even cause the removal of all visible signages, marks, advertisements, labels, prints, and other effects. Okay. Ito, we're transitioning to the other title on board of directors. This will be of interest to you, trustees and officers. Okay. So just a comparison again, you will see, unlike the Corpo Code, which provides a minimum number of directors. Kanina, incorporators. This time, directors. May minimum of 5. In the RCC, no more minimum number, but it's a maximum of 15. So it's possible now to have even one, no, for one person corporation, one director. Or you could have the regular corporations natin. You can already have like 2, 3, 4 directors. Okay? Allowed na po yan. And but in the case of the trustees, also no minimum. You can have like 2, 3, 4 trustees, but there is no maximum. Okay, so pwede biyan 15. Actually, the original proposed provision there should be a cap for trustees. They don't want more than 15 trustees. But I asserted this in Congress that there are certain associations, which are really big, umbrella organizations, federations. You know, they normally have 20, 25 trustees to accommodate all the regional chapters. No, so well, our lawmakers acceded not to set that ceiling. So pwede po more than 15 trustees. Okay. As to their term, if you will note, directors, only 1 year. Okay? In the Corporate Code, ganun, 1 year din, no? And normally for trustees, the case of trustees, pinapayagan natin, okay, director 1 year, trustees pwede 5 years. May maximum. There are associations which we approve for trustees having a term of 5 years. Ang basis natin yung founder shares. Kasi dati founder shares pwede, as long as 5 years, they can act as directors. So, but in the RCC now, hindi na po pwede. Ang maximum is 3 years. 3 years na lang. And then, the requirement for residency, which is before, the majority of the directors and trustees must be residents. No such requirement now in the RCC. Okay, we have opened up because, you know, the world is getting smaller. People can, maybe in the other side of the world, can still, because of online and remote communication, can still do their job as a director or trustee. Okay. With respect to trustees' terms and qualifications. Okay. Oh, we covered this already. Okay. Next would be just a summary. Let's just summarize. No. Under the RCC, to your right, you will see no more than 15. Trustees, maybe more than 15, as I explained. For the terms of director, it should be no longer than 1 year. And for trustees, not exceeding 3 years. For qualifications, directors must have at least 1 share of stock. And in the case of trustees, he must also be a member of the non-stock association. Okay. On disqualifications of directors, trustees, or officers, there had been additional grounds. It used to be only 2 in the corporation code. This time, we added my additional 3 yan. No? And let's look at the summary. Okay, there you go. Yung first 2, to your right, you only would you kept there convicted by by final judgment for an offense punishable by imprisonment of not exceeding 6 years. That was there in the corporation code. And violation of the corporation code. So you're disqualified for 5 years. You cannot be a director within that period. Now, we added violation na rin ng SRC is a ground for disqualification. And B, this is very important. Those who are found administratively liable for any offense involving fraudulent acts. So you can go to the SEC, we can question them and take out their, their right to become directors for at least 5 years if they are guilty of fraudulent acts. It is done at the level of the SEC. And of course, in the case of a foreign court or our equivalent regulatory authority, also provides for violations and misconduct of those which are recognized here. We can also consider that as a ground to disqualify. Okay, don't worry about the font size. I just want to show you the full provisions of both codes and added paragraph in the removal of directors and trustees. You see, the SEC has the authority to remove directors or trustees either motu proprio or upon verified complaint. SEC can also hold other directors or trustees liable if they fail to inform SEC of such disqualification. Okay, here's the summary. So it's clearer now. You have, again, two modes, motu proprio or upon verified complaint, but of course, after due notice and hearing, in either case. And they can be removed when they are elected, despite disqualification, or the disqualification arose subsequent to the election, or the disqualification was discovered even subsequent to the election. And the SEC may impose sanctions on the directors and trustees who, with knowledge of the disqualification, still failed to remove such director or trustee. Okay. Again, this is just to show you the provisions on vacancies in the board and the new concept of an emergency board. Let's go to the summary. Okay, there you go. In case of removal or expiration of term, the director is replaced on the regular or special meeting by the stockholders. However, in case of death, physical incapacity, or resignation, the vacancy can be filled up by the remaining directors if, there should be if, still constituting a quorum. Okay? Now, that's the same for both codes. Except that in the RCC now, it provides for an emergency board, which is allowed to be constituted. But you pick them from among the officers to stand in as a director. And there are two conditions. First, the vacancy prevents a quorum among the remaining directors. And second, the emergency action is really required to prevent grave, substantial, and irreparable loss or damage to the corporation. Now, that emergency director is only good during that crisis. So he is the emergency director. And it requires the unanimous vote of the remaining directors or trustees. Now, just to cite you an example, there's a contract that's expiring and you don't have your board incomplete, walang quorum. Okay? And then if you don't get to renew such a contract, then probably it will cause the bankruptcy of the company. You can pick one of your officers there, probably your secretary or your finance guy, your treasurer, put in and just to be able to meet the requirements of quorum. Okay. Okay. Now, let's go to the interesting topic of independent directors. There is no equivalent provision in the corporate code. Okay. Section 22 is for independent directors in stock corporations. Okay. While Section 91, okay, provides for that except with respect to independent trustees of non-stock corporations vested with public interest, only a member of the corporation shall be elected as trustee. Is there such a thing as independent trustee in a non-stock corporation? Yes, especially I think some examples cited were non-stock utilities. Okay, and then the other thing here is this, because normally what we do, we elect the the directors or trustees, and from among themselves, they elect the officers. Section 91 provides that members, these are for non-stock corporation, may directly elect their officers, the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and then a number of other members of the board. Okay, so meaning voting can now be done at large. Okay, just a summary, just a definition, quick definition of independent directors. A person who, apart from shareholdings and fees received from the corporation, is independent of management and free from any business or relationship which could materially interfere with the exercise of independent judgment. Okay. As I said, this is completely new. Corporations vested with public interest shall have independent directors constituting at least 20% of the board. So if it's 5, 1 of them. If it's 10, 2. 15, 3. Okay. So which corporations do we refer to? These are, of course, those yung mga publicly listed, securities registered, those with securities registered with the SEC, those listed with the exchange, or those with assets at least 50 million and has more or 200 or more holders of shares, and each holding at least 100 shares. These are so-called public companies. And then, of course, the financial intermediaries, banks, even insurance, pre-need trusts. Okay, and those which were corporations determined by the SEC as businesses vested with public interest. So, kailangan ng independent directors doon. Okay. Again, this is just a comparative presentation. Let's just go to the summary. Okay, here you go. So, under the corporation code, same. Must be a director, must be director. That is for the president. For the treasurer, it's stated the corporate code may or may not be a director. Okay, now, question. How about in the RCC? We said must be a resident. The original proposed provision in Congress then was the treasurer and the must be a director. Nakalagay doon. The treasurer must be a director. Now, we discussed this kasi ang treasurer, if he is a director, will be an executive director. So we're avoiding that. As much as possible, we're trying to divide the management side and the policy-making side, no? the directors. So we went against having the treasurer being required to be a director. But there's no stopping them from making the treasurer as a director. But it's not mandated under the code. Okay? But as to residents, yes, because nakalagay din doon, either the president or the treasurer must be a resident. We felt that the treasurer, since he has to deal with the day-to-day financial activities of the firm, must be here. Okay? Now, in regard to the secretary, it's the same. Resident, citizen for both codes. Then there's this new thing, the compliance officer. There is now a requirement for having a compliance officer appointed. Only for companies which are vested with public interest. And of course, the rest of the officers dependent upon sa bylaws. Okay? Can we sit next? Okay. Now, this is just the rule of what to do in case no elections were held. Okay. Again, this is just a comparative presentation, so don't be overwhelmed by all the funds there. Okay. These are just the provisions in both. So let's go to the summary. Eto. Okay. It is a requirement that if you don't hold your election, it must be submitted within 30 days. That information must, okay, let's go back. When you have your stockholders meeting, okay, and your election, you have 30 days within which to file the general information sheet. Okay, but if you can't, you don't get to hold it, you'll have to explain to the SEC the reason, the justified non-holding of the election. Then you should also include, as part of that information, the new election date, which shall not be later than 60 days from the scheduled date. Now, if you don't do that, and there is no date designated in the report, or the scheduled election was again not held, the SEC may summarily order that the election be held. Okay, so there will be an order which can be made upon application of a stockholder or a director, and after verification by SEC of the unjustified non-holding of the election, it may issue now an order directing the holding, the issuance of notice, the time, place, the presiding officer, record date, and the termination to those who are entitled to book. And this is very important, especially for the majority, kasi usually what they do is, kung may minority, they don't conduct elections anymore. Anyway, you're the minority. Okay. But under the RCC, and if the SEC ordered the holding of the election, kasi for ilang taon na walang election, it is possible now on the RCC, kasi usually si minority lang nandun, so walang quorum. Nakalagay sa RCC, the whoever is there present by virtue of the notice issued and order issued by the SEC, they will constitute the quorum, okay, and may conduct the election. So if you have the numbers anyway, you're the majority, you should just attend, okay? Okay, on meetings, let's just take a few important revisions, then malapit na tayo, patapos na, okay? Kasi importante itong meetings ito, okay? Let me just draw your attention sa attendance. No? It says there that it can be in person or through remote communication, video conferencing, teleconferencing, or other alternative modes. Okay, and by the way, this is very important too. Directors cannot attend by proxy. Never was allowed, even in the corporate code. Okay, because you are elected because you're supposed to represent stockholders. So andun po kayo now. And especially now, because you can be anywhere in the world, you can attend naman via remote communication. Okay. Here, on meetings of stockholders naman, nakalagay kasi doon, to your left, you will see, it will be held on the date fixed in the bylaws. Same din sa RCC. Now, if it is not so fixed, it could be held sa corporate code any date in April. Okay, in any date in April. However, in the RCC, if it's not fixed, it will be held on a date after April 15. So if it's not fixed, it would be held on any date after April 15 as determined by the board. Okay. Pwede ba gawin ng board ano na lang May 15? No. What's contemplated within that month lang po. Because if you go beyond, baka naman there's a possibility that you will prolong or perpetuate your term. Okay? Now, but in case you cannot really hold it, like itong pandemic na to, pinapayagan naman ni SEC. We have been very, very lenient in allowing extensions because the circumstances. Okay. This is still on meetings, no? Particularly on notifications. So very quickly lang. Dati kasi ang notice, written notice must be issued to stockholders for 2 weeks. So 14 days. Now it has to be 21 days. Purpose so that you have more time to be able to read all those and prepare for that meeting. Okay? Okay. Pinapayagan na rin the serving it by electronic mail. Email lang, pwede na. No? Pwede na by email. Pinapayagan. We have already adopted the technology. And for special meetings naman, ang notice should be at least a week prior to the meeting. Okay? I think that's just the new thing there. Okay, the next slide, almost done. Ito on the, okay, itong question of remote communications in the meeting of stockholders. So how do you do it? Can you automatically resort to remote communications? In the RCC, ito stated, sabi ni RCC, if you are a company vested with public interest, automatic yan. PLC, public companies, pwede agad gawin yung remote communication. But if it is not, if you're not a company vested in public interest, pwede, provided it's either you amend your bylaws to allow this, or by a majority board resolution to allow remote communication or in absentia. Okay. So ang ano dyan is this. If you do it by mere board resolution, this is in our memorandum circular. Kung by way of board resolution, it's on a meeting per meeting basis lang. So hindi pwede remote all throughout. But if you want to institutionalize the practice, you amend your bylaws. Okay? So amend your bylaws so you don't have to pass, board resolutions every time you get to meet. Okay. Okay, OPC, just a couple of slides here. Okay, obviously, one person corporation is a corporation with a single stockholder. But again, only natural persons are allowed. Trust or estate can form such an OPC. That's what we call OPC. Now, in the case of banks, pre-need, trust, insurance, public, and publicly listed companies, and non-chartered GOCCs, they may not incorporate as one-person corporations. Let's go to the quick summary. Okay. Okay, I mentioned already that it's a corporation with a single stockholder. Again, it has a personality, and that's distinct from the single stockholder. It enjoys limited liability feature. Okay? Ang tawag niya ni Dean Villanueva, sabi niya, it is an incorporated sole proprietorship. Okay? So incorporated now, though sole proprietorship. Okay. And it can only be a natural person, trust or estate. That single stockholder, he's himself the sole director and president. And he cannot be secretary. He can also be treasurer, but he needs to put up a surety bond with the SEC. And then he needs to designate a nominee and an alternate nominee who will take over the OPC in case of his incapacity. And again, OPC is only good for stock corporations, never for non-stock. It may have a perpetual or specific term, it can change now, it's more flexible. No minimum capital requirement. Originally, the requirement was at least 1 million pesos. No, it was taken out already, finally. And then in the name of the corporation, you have to put their OPC either below or the end of the corporate name. So it could be like, let's say, ABC OPC, like that. Okay, and no need to file bylaws. And why? Because, well, that bylaws is the internal governance of the company, and he's the only one, so no need for that. And it can be converted from ordinary to stock corporation, and then vice versa. Oh, okay, I reached my end. So I conclude my presentation. Just allow me to state our SEC mantra. We say now it's easy at SEC. So IPP Alfred, you must be ready to take the questions. I'm done. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Aquino, for the wonderful presentation. It's been very insightful and truly complimentary to everyone's knowledge. Yeah. And with that, we wish to move forward with the question and answer portion.
Brian, I have a question. Can I start?
I have also a question, Brian.
So we see some interest from our attendees, so we'd like to call on Rick Gindak for this question.
Secretary, thank you for that presentation, it clarifies a lot of provisions that are very useful for all of us. Now, I work in branding, and part of my deliverables in branding sometimes is the naming of these corporations. And there's a provision there about making the name very, very distinguishable. And as we know, not only on the SEC side, we have to factor the due diligence with the IPO side, the ownability of these names. And since if you look at the IPO or the WIPO for the international directory as well, most of these names are already trademarked. So will that pose a lot of difficulty for the new companies that are going to open after this law is enacted in terms of the naming, for example? Or you can elucidate further on this, please?
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that question. Well, it has been a bit problematic, no? Especially for those which are very close, no? But so far, if it is a corporate name, we will note we have our database. No, it has to. We normally would check, but it's not so perfect too. But nonetheless, we have a division just to check whether in fact it can overwrite the system. No, so pinapayagan, and then we really have to weigh. In fact, there are cases filed before us just to sort out who has superior rights over a particular name. Okay, and we have in fact ordered the change of names because especially kung same yung nature of business, like I recall you involving a car dealer, and then halos parehas lang yung ano nila yung pangalan, no. We have to order the one who applied later to change it because two ways yan eh. It may be advantageous, especially if it's a popular name and then you're riding on. Probably you'd like to more or less get some form of the goodwill of that company.
Right.
But the downside of it too is that lalo na yung mga communications, no? It could be bills which will end up in your company kasi masyadong close na yung company names. No, it's okay. It's a check. Probably cover sa'yo. But ang problem natin is it's the same. You get bills, you get subpoenas, you get so masama ayon. But going to your question about the IPO, we are sorting with that office because ang nangyayari ngayon is this. What we do is, let's say ABC Corporation operating under the business name of, okay. So that they will be allowed. Kasi it's possible for a company or for a corporation to have different business names. Okay? Now, if somebody complains, well, yeah, we conduct a hearing on that. And then ultimately, we have to decide, given using that standard, yung distinguishable. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Just a little follow through lang, Secretary, because what if I file a company, let's say XYZ Corporation, that is closer to an existing company, but this company has been dormant for, let's say, 60 years or 30 years, and I am being barred from applying for a corporate name because this name already exists in your database, but non-operational at all. So how do we resolve this kind of issues?
Okay, more likely if it's been dormant for 60 years, we must have already revoked that company. And within 5 years, no, it's a period of 5 years. You you don't get to revive your company and all. We already give it to other new entrants. 5 years lang, pinapayagan na namin.
Okay. Thank you so much, Secretary.
Okay.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I have a question to Brian. Is that okay?
Brian, Cesar Campos here.
So another question for Chairman Aquino. Let's call on IG Nolito.
Reggie. Hi, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon.
Hi.
I have actually two queries. No? So I'll try to put them. I'll go through one of them first. First is I have this unique situation. Four equal shareholders of a company. 3 of them, representing 75%, decided to put up a competing company.
Okay.
So that's disloyalty. I think it's a case of disloyalty. No?
Right.
First thing I'd like to ask is that under the new rules now, is that a ground for the removal of those directors? Because they're also directors. Because in the rules, it says now that if 2/3 ratify, wala na. Hindi na siya disloyalty. But in this case, competing company talaga.
70.
So yung minority na 25%, gustong tanggalin yung 3. Okay? And then pangalawa, wala na ngayon yung criminal aspect. Tinanggal na, no? So paano ngayon 'yon? Ano ngayon ang option nung minority 25?
Okay. You know, it's always been we've always followed the rule of majority, and the magic number really is 67%.
Yes.
Okay. If you have 67%, you could practically do anything. You could even amend your articles of incorporation. Kasi yung requirement nga is 2/3 eh. That's 66.67 to be accurate. So you could practically do anything. Ang ano dyan for the minority is, well, you might just consider it. We're trying to, the corporation, the RCC actually now tries to promote and protect minorities stockholders, but it can only be so much eh. Meron din, like in this case, 75%. That's even beyond the 66.67% requirement. So you're completely at the mercy of the other stockholders. Okay? So hindi naman din namin pwede protektahan lahat ng because this is a violation of a corporate opportunity. Ginamit niya nila for their purpose, no? So it's best, ako ang suggestion ko doon, mahirap assert where you don't have the numbers. It has always been about the numbers in the corporate world. You would not want to be in a corporation or dealing with where you dealing a group who do not even respect and value you. Might as well, go your way and kasi it's very hard. It's a big hurdle. 66.67 nga lang, yun lang requirement. Ito 75. So easily they have the numbers. So it's really difficult unless there's fraud. You can go to us anytime. We can run after fraudulent acts of these stockholders. No, there's a tyranny of the majority. But mind you, hindi lang naman tyranny of the majority, meron din tyranny of the minority. We are also very mindful about that. There are also minority stockholders who are there just to also cause havoc in the corporations. May mga strike suits and all. They will even go for involuntary dissolution para just to break the kumbaga, rock the boat. So again, it's all about it's a numbers game. It's all about who has that magic number of 2/3. More so ito, 75%. That's a bit tricky, mahirap.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a second point lang. Kailan ho kaya maaayos ang system ng SEC? Hirap na ho kami mag-incorporate.
Okay. There are things. We used to have a problem before. Matagal, from 3 days to 3 months. Okay. We tried to improve. Okay. Meron na tayong mga fast track services. Pinayagan natin. Within lang yan, no? Alalay na eh. Especially, it's very important now to act very fast sa incorporation. We have online. Yung online system natin, tuloy pa naman din. Now, if you are really rushing, we have a booth. Meron tayong public assistance dyan just to assist especially the tracing and all of your applications.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a problem, I'll give you my number, and through my friend si compañero Eddie Up, you could ring me up if it's really that urgent, because we can trace and retrieve and even assist you in the incorporation. Ang problem lang natin partly is that yung sa company registration natin, as I said, naka-COVID na rin some of our staff, no, but not necessarily in the office. We're stressing that, but we have to follow yung social distancing. So there's only 1/3 of our present yung manpower ngayon. Yung operational capacity is limited to 1/3, but the other 2/3 would be work from home. Now, but iba pa rin talaga if they are reporting. So we are experiencing delays. That's why even lalo na sa submission of the reports, you have to sanitize it. Hindi naman namin pwede rin make mga shoot box. Pinapasanitize din namin because some of our haulers na COVID na rin. So we cannot also force our people, and we have to protect them as well. So lalo na because even yung haulers natin, pwede rin, they can also contaminate our regular organic personnel. So we're a bit careful. Pasensya na lang. But we're doing our best. In case you need something very urgent, you try to get in touch with me. I'll assist you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, PP Reggie, for the insightful question. We'd like to go to a submitted question from Mr. George Barcelon. Mr. Aquino,
yes.
Is there a cap on the number of years an independent director can serve?
Okay. Yeah, we have that cap of 9 years. Continuous 9 years. So there must be a break. Of course, after that, hindi naman perpetual yun. Because as much as possible, we need also to bring in somehow some break in where they serve para meron na rin yan. Lalo na these are for publicly listed companies. 9 years is the maximum.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, 9 years and then 1 year leave or sabbatical, and the
Yes.
person can be reappointed again?
Yes po.
Sige. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
So thank you for the answer. We'd like to go to another submitted question. Pretty quick one. It goes, what are the changes in the appraisal rights of minority shareholders?
I didn't get it. Can you please repeat? I didn't get it.
What are the appraisal rights?
So the question is, what are the appraisal rights of minority shareholders?
Okay, one good example is in the case of those companies. You said you go to into perpetuity, but you want to stick. Probably it's going to end in 2025. No, you don't want to go beyond that. So of course, if the others, the majority would prefer just to go beyond 2025, which is the original term in your articles of incorporation, you are allowed to avail of appraisal rights. The same is true for some amendment in the rights of preferred shares. Kung pinalitan, you could also go for appraisal rights. Same for mergers and a number of instances.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we'd like to call on EP Cesar Campos for his question.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Aquino.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, please.
You may have heard about the Club Filipino situation. The minority, some 20 years ago, won the election. And for the last 20 years, they could not call election because they have no quorum, or they managed not to have a quorum for the last 20 years. Is there anything SEC can do on it?
Well, one of the slides, I covered one of the provisions there, saying that if elections had not been done and it is not justified, the SEC may order the holding of the election. That's in the revised corporation code.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, po.
So thank you all for the very insightful questions. And moving forward, we would like to call on President Peter Manzano for his response.
Brian, sorry, Mr. President. I just like to state a disclaimer po, kasi the information I'm giving is only for educational purposes. If there are certain things, I just take it. I have to just make a disclaimer. I do not want to bind the other members of the commission. There are 5 of us.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. As mentioned by our eminent speaker, it took almost 40 years for our country to finally revise the Corporation Code of the Philippines, known as before, Batas Pambansa Bilang 68, and which took effect on May 1, 1980. With the passage of Republic Act 11232, otherwise known as the Revised Corporation Code of the Philippines, which took effect on February 23, 2019, it amended the 38-year-old Corporation Code in an effort to improve the ease of doing business in the Philippines. As explained to us earlier by our learned and most esteemed speaker, some of the timely and notable changes made in the revised Corporation Code include the removal of the minimum number of incorporators and allowing the establishment of a one-person corporation, the removal of the 50-year corporate term, thereby allowing the perpetual existence of a corporation, the allowance of remote communication methods in attending board meetings subject to provisions of corporate bylaws, the empowerment of the SEC to remove disqualified members of the board of directors or trustees, the introduction of independent directors and trustees for good governance, and the introduction of provisions that permit the electronic filing of reportorial requirements and attendance in meetings via remote communication or in absentia, among others, practices that were not recognized in the old law. We can all say that with all these changes contained in the revised Corporation Code, ours is now at par with international standards as it somehow establishes greater protections for shareholders, especially those holding minority interest, as earlier mentioned by our speaker, especially now that the SEC is given the power to remove disqualified members of the board of directors or trustees. And with the creation of the one-person corporation and corporate perpetuity, it now makes it easier for foreign and Filipino entrepreneurs to enter the local market. Back then, there was only one corporation sold, that is the Roman Catholic Church. Now you can put up your own corporation by your lone self. In the words of Senate Minority Leader Frank Drilon, the principal author of the law, he said, the passage into law of this measure is critical in our bid to improve the country's business climate and make our economy more competitive with the rest of the world. We do hope that with the revised Corporation Code, the SEC is more equipped in protecting not just shareholders, but most importantly, the public who might be facing another fresh round of investment scams. For while our people are looking for business opportunities as a result of having lost sources of income during these trying times, scammers too are looking for their next victims. We hope the SEC continues to be vigilant in protecting the investing public. For while the changes brought about by the revised Corporation Code may contribute a lot in the ease of doing business and corporate governance, It may also provide people with nefarious intentions to take advantage of such provisions in the law in propagating their fraudulent schemes. We hope that SEC's mantra, "It's easy at SEC," remains solely for the benefit of legitimate companies doing business, as well as non-profit and charitable institutions like the Rotary Clubs. So on behalf of the Rotary Club of Makati, our lovely aunts, our district governor, Chacha Camacho, the other Rotarians from the different Rotary clubs in our district, especially to my classmates, the Perfect Vision presidents, our Rotaractors, and all other guests in attendance, please accept our heartfelt gratitude for taking time in sharing to us your insights on the topic, timely changes in corporate landscape, the passage of the revised Corporation Code. Once again, thank you, Chairman Emilio Aquino. Thank you very much. And as tokens of our appreciation for your time and service, we shall giving you a copy of our 50th anniversary coffee table book, which contains our club's 50 years of community service and fellowship, together with a bottle of red wine for you to enjoy while going through the pages of our book. Once again, thank you very much, Chairman Aquino.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you, President Peter, and for your leadership. Thank you to all the fellow Rotarians and aunts, Chairman Aquino, for your time. We'd like to request all our attendees to open up your cameras for our photo op.
Photo op. Okay, open that. 1, 2. Hold on. One more. 1, 2. Thank you. Cookie.
Thank you.
Chairman Aquino, are you still on board?
Yes, I'm here.
May I ask a question? Because normally one of the issues is regarding the dissolution, dissolving a corporation. Are there any amendments that are changes in the revised corporation code so that the dissolution of a company is easier than what people feel now very difficult? Thank you.
Can I just request? I didn't get the question, but
I'm sorry.
I'll ask the.
I know the revised corporation setup really to improve our attracts setting up the ease of setting up corporation and running it.
Yes,
but on the
right.
flip side, corporations sometimes really have to dissolve, and then there are many requirements to dissolve
Okay.
corporation. And I thought, are there any changes with the RCC that goes along that line? Thank you.
Well, it has never been a problem as far as SEC is concerned. The usual hurdle will be the tax clearance of BIR.
BIR.
Yeah, from our side of things, don't worry. You have a problem, you can just call me.
Okay, thank you very much.
Wala
Chairman,
akong problema sa amin.
nice seeing you again, Chairman.
Yeah. Likewise. Salamat.
Chairman, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, my pleasure.